Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of
Psycho Opinion.
Today, we have Liza with me and today we've got a really interesting topic. It's a story, really, of kind of a true crime story of sorts, and it's a lot of twists and turns. I've got very strong feelings on this case on both sides, really, and it's quite interesting. Like I said, so let's go ahead and get right into it. So today's episode is about Todd Wellingham, and to get started, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Liza.
Yeah, just kind of as a disclaimer, this does have to do with children. So if you don't like hearing about children or it triggers you or anything, I just want to let you know that this case does talk about child things. So just kind of let people know about that. Yeah, so it's Cameron Todd Wellingham. I'm not sure if people have ever heard of him. In my opinion, this case is not talked about enough. There was a movie about it as well, and there's been several pieces on it as well. So kind of to start it off with, I do want to kind of talk about who Cameron Todd Wellingham was. So Cameron Todd Wellingham was a man. He was born in Ardmore, I don't know if I want to pronounce this right, Ardmore, Oklahoma. And his mother had a bunch of different kind of children with a lot of different men. And his mother kind of abandoned him to his stepmother and his
You're calling
dad.
his mother a whore?
Yeah, she was kind of
Okay.
she was interesting.
Sounded like that's what you were saying.
So when he was 13 months old, she basically abandoned him in California with his stepmom and his father. Eugenia was his stepmom, and she basically raised him for the most part. His dad was kind of an asshole. And so Cameron was kind of, well, he actually goes by Todd, so we're going to call him Todd from now on, but his name was Cameron Todd Wellingham. He was kind of bad in school. He started doing drugs and sniffing paint when he was 11 or 12. And then, kind of make a long story short, he moved to Corsicana to be with his girlfriend, Stacy. And they got married. And
How old were they? They were young, right?
they were very, very young when they got married. I believe Todd was 23 when they got married, and she was a little younger. So, and he was a little bit. Todd was a hoe. He his stepmother had kind of talked about he had a kind of a cougar girlfriend. She was
kind of sounds like that's the theme of his family. I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I suppose.
Well, yeah, and so his girlfriend Barbara Moat, she was quite a bit older than him. I think she actually.
So now this is a girlfriend besides his wife.
Yes.
So it's a mistress.
He had a girlfriend before they got married, and then after they had the three daughters. They had three daughters. Amber, Cameron, and Carmen, and after they had the three daughters, he decided to marry Stacy, and his stepmom Eugenia kind of told him that he chose his children over Barbara, and Barbara was pretty much she was heartbroken because she called him her soulmate, and he was the love of her life. So now we're going to talk about the crime that he is accused of, and so this is it was a fire. And so on December 23rd, 1991, in Corsicana, Texas, Stacy Wellingham, it was December 23rd, so it was right before Christmas. Stacy was shopping at the local thrift store for Christmas presents. And their neighbor, Diane Barbie, actually heard her daughter. Her daughter said that their neighbor's house was on fire, and they saw Todd outside. So Todd was at home with the children, and Stacy was out shopping, so Stacy was not home. And so she heard him outside screaming that his babies were in the house burning. And Diane was telling him to, go back inside. And so the firefighters got there. They had three little girls, a 2-year-old Amber, who was brought out of the house, and she later passed away. And then the 1-year-old twins, Carmen and Cameron.
She was brought outside of the house by paramedics and firefighters.
Yeah,
right?
firefighters. Yeah, and she was unconscious, and then unfortunately, 2-year-old Amber and the 1-year-old twins Cameron and Carbon unfortunately passed away. So the people in the
So
town.
that's him and the 3 girls in the house when the fire starts, and
Yes.
he gets out, and unfortunately his 3 daughters burnt to death or had injuries that led to
Yeah.
death from fire.
Yes. Yes. And so.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's not a very, either way, it's awful, horrific, a thing that occurred. And so the town actually they didn't, so they thought it was kind of weird that he didn't really have many injuries, and they really didn't think he was acting like a grieving father, because the town, actually, the local bar got together and had a dart tournament to raise money for the girls' funerals. And so they didn't, Cameron or Todd was kind of, he got really into it, kind of really into the partying, and he kind of wanted to get these brand new darts. And they thought it was kind of weird because they
Brand
were
new
raising.
darts.
Yeah, he wanted to buy some brand new darts for the dart tournament. And so the police just thought this was really weird, and he was having too much fun.
So you're saying he wanted to use the money that they were raising for
Yeah.
the funerals?
Yeah, to buy these darts. So
Okay.
that didn't sit too well with the townspeople and the bartender and the bar owner and all
Yeah,
that.
considering your Christmas shopping at Goodwill, which there's nothing wrong with, but I mean, you would think that the money would really be necessary.
Yeah, and so
For
it
funeral
started.
costs.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of started getting people kind of talking about they didn't think that he tried hard enough. Like they said that they didn't think he really went back inside to get the girls, and try to really save his kids as much as anybody. Anybody thinks that they would do anything to try to save their children from a burning. But you have 2 babies, so
I don't think that I would have came out of the house without them.
yeah.
But I'll save my opinions till we get further through the story here. I've got quite a few opinions. I don't want to mess you up, so let's continue.
So this is when the fire investigators and the police started calling the house actually a crime scene, and so they said that the investigators said that they thought the fire started on the floor.
Now, let me ask you something, though. Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you, but
No.
so he's outside of the house when there's the fire. He didn't sustain too many injuries, and was it after? Did the police instantly believe that it was a crime scene?
So no, so I'm gonna get into that, like what his statements to the police were and everything. Like
Okay.
I'm gonna get into that a
So
little.
he was being questioned during all of this time, and there was like an investigation kind of going on just to wrap up what happened.
Just
Okay.
after kind of
So it
his
wasn't-
lack of injuries, his statements to police, and he said that he did kind of try to go back into the house. He did try to go into the house and get his kids.
So they didn't think it was like an accident at first or anything. They just instantly kind of went into just a standard investigation.
I think, well, I'm not completely 100% like at first. I think at first everybody just thought this was a horrible accident, and then kind of his actions later on, like his lack of,
Kind of raised some eyebrows.
yeah, like his lack of
Okay.
grief and all that kind of stuff, people kind of got kind of weirded out about it. So
Okay.
in the actual, so the house, and they began to call it, kind of started calling it the crime scene. They saw the pour patterns, and they appeared to have leaked through, and they saw 20. There was a pour pattern on the entrance, or the threshold of the.
Now, as the story goes on, and we continue, you'll know why I say this, but these are alleged pour patterns, are they not?
Yes, alleged pour patterns. They saw pour patterns where it looked like he had just poured accelerant
Yeah, okay.
into the house
So
and out
it
the door.
appeared as though there was accelerant,
Yeah.
some kind of gasoline, kerosene, something like that.
Exactly. And on the outside threshold, there appeared to have something that had leaked through the doorway, and they found it positive for it had kerosene in it, and they said that there was 20 indicators of arson. And so the lead investigator, Jimmy Hensley, was the one that said that he interrogated Todd, and he said that it seemed more like he was bragging that he tried to save his kids, that he wasn't really grieving. And he said that it wasn't until he said that So Todd said that he was crawling. He heard Amber call from the room, and she called. She was like, "Daddy," and he said that he crawled on the floor and tried to get the twins, and but there was too much smoke, so he had to leave.
I mean, what's there to brag about if you actually didn't save the kids? You know, I mean.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
yeah.
I tried to save them. I mean, but you didn't. So why would you even brag that you tried?
Yeah, exactly. So Jimmy Hensley, he said that he didn't see any burns on his feet, and he thought that was weird. He was like, if he tried to go back in the house, he didn't understand why he didn't have any burns on his feet. And so Cameron did have burns on him. He had like on his shoulders and stuff like that, but there was no burns on his feet or anything, and they were just kind of like minor burns. And so Jimmy Hensley said that he didn't really show emotion until he showed him the pictures of his daughters, and then he said that he felt like he finally kind of was starting to crumble, and kind of like his guiltiness was coming to light.
I think anybody would have a seriously emotional reaction to seeing those pictures, regardless
exactly
of guilt or not. I mean, that's something that, I mean, I can't even imagine what that felt like to see that.
Exactly. So at the trial, so the trial started to begin, and his attorney, actually, David Martin, they wanted to have him confess to a guilty plea and actually avoid the death penalty, but Todd wouldn't take the plea, and he wanted to go to trial because and potentially get the death penalty. So at the trial, it lasted in August of 1992. And they actually had a jailhouse informant, Johnny Webb, that said Todd actually confessed to him to killing his girls, and that he had poured accelerant in the shapes of pentagrams as a satanic ritual. And there's actually posters on the wall that look like satanic posters.
So he admitted this. Allegedly, supposedly he had admitted this to a fellow inmate.
Exactly. Yeah, to Johnny Webb. He was the jailhouse informant. He was a complete stranger. And so, and actually, the abuse of Stacy had started to come to light as well. So he did.
And I don't know if you heard. I don't know if you read or researched this, but the jailhouse informant. I mean, how reliable was he? I mean, was he a real reliable guy?
So
was he somebody that had been involved in a lot of cases before? He was reliable.
So we're gonna kind of get into that a little bit later on about how he was somebody that was in a jailhouse and that was in jail for robbery and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know how you can kind of try.
Well, you can't really trust anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that does seem kind of like a specific confession.
He's not like an upstanding member of society going in there saying, "Hey, this guy confessed to me." It's kind of...
Yeah, but that's still just a strange confession that you did the pour patterns in a certain...
and like a pentagram and in a certain way and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, it was a little interesting. So, I
had thought, and I'm sorry again, I don't mean to interrupt again, but I did a little research. I know this is your topic. You really want to discuss this. I did a little research. I thought that I had read that there was a policeman in particular that really didn't like Todd Willingham, and he was the one that was after him, and I thought that it was him that kind of started the pentagram thing. Now, is that correct, first of all? And if so, is that kind of maybe why that information came from the jailhouse snitch?
So I know that when the fire investigators were in their home, they actually saw the posters on the wall, and they just thought it was kind of weird. They didn't like the posters, and they just thought, because it was Led Zeppelin and Iron Maiden posters, so they had like skulls and stuff like that were kind of, it was kind of during the satanic panic era of the Damien Echols.
Just screams Satan worship.
Yeah, and people just didn't. It was kind of like, kind of the Damien Echols, West Memphis 3 era with the satanic panic. So any kind of stuff like that just really was something that was looked down upon.
Of course. Nobody likes the Satan worship.
Yeah. So in the trial, actually, John Jackson, who was the prosecutor, he actually brought in a psychiatrist named James Grigson, and he testified that Todd was a sociopath and he was violent and all this kind of stuff. He had actually never met Todd, and which was very interesting. And he's actually called Dr. Death because he's actually testified in many death penalty cases and
hopefully he's met more of the defendants or at least met some of them.
I don't know. And actually, his probation officers, his previous probation officers, probably one named Polly Gooden, said that this really wasn't kind of true. He just kind of got arrested for like kind of petty stuff. Like he was kind of just like a goober. And Judge B.B. Bridges actually testified that he just did stupid stuff, like, basically like shoplifting, bicycle, on a bicycle.
In his past.
Yeah, and I mean, and he would beat on Stacy, and that they had been called to the domestic violence cases in those instances, and some of the neighbors did say that they thought he could potentially kill Stacy. So
see, now I know that
was a little.
I don't know if anybody knew anything about that or if there's any evidence of that, but when I was first reading this, when you're watching a movie or something, you're kind of like, I can see what's coming up here. I can see what's going to happen next. I had read that in my research that he was into drugs.
Yeah.
And even like huffing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So when I had read that he was into huffing, and typically people that are huffers of when you're doing drugs that way, it's usually paint or gas or something that's very flammable. So I kind of, when I was reading about it, I was like, all right, dude set the fire with he was gas huffing or something. And was there any evidence of that, or did it seem like that was the case? Or
I've never actually heard any of that. I know that I've kind of got some theories about maybe he was on drugs and maybe he didn't really understand really what was going on or something like that. But I've never really actually heard if he had
I don't know. It was just what I was thinking when I was reading it. I was like, a fire. He used to be a huffer. Maybe an accident with gas. I don't know. That was just my thoughts. So please continue.
So, yeah, and I think when we get into that, the fire science of it and stuff like that, I don't think there's really any indicators of that either.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then all the satanic posters and stuff were brought on the wall.
Like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, like the Led Zeppelin thing, and then Johnny Webb and all that kind of stuff was in the trial. So
when I was growing up, I had a Led Zeppelin poster, and I never did any Satan worshiping, so.
Cameron Todd Wellingham was sentenced to death row, and he was given the death penalty. The jury found him guilty of killing his 3 baby girls.
So at this point, everybody's convinced this guy set the fire on purpose.
Yeah.
He wanted. Was it first degree?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm more than likely sure because it was the death penalty.
Yeah. Well, I was just asking because typically that's the whole purpose behind the first degree is that it was planned, it was premeditated, it was thought out. So.
I don't want to say 100% sure without checking, but.
Well, I mean, honestly, if you felt like somebody killed 3 innocent baby girls, I mean, quite honestly, that I feel like that calls for the death penalty if that's what we believe happened. So.
Yeah.
I'm on track with him. I get it.
So after the trial, Stacy actually maintained his innocence. She didn't visit him on death row, but she did say that she did still think he was innocent. So Stacy did think he was innocent. And he actually while in prison, he began writing a woman. He had a pen pal named Elizabeth Gilbert, and she talked to Stacy. She went and talked to Stacy about Todd, and Stacy talked about how Todd would hit her, and he was really abusive. And she actually said that even though she thought that Todd could actually potentially kill her, that she just didn't think he could kill her babies.
There's never any accusations of child abuse.
I didn't really get into all that. I know that I had seen some where they tried to think like where he thought maybe Stacy had done something to the kids and he tried to cover it up and all that kind of stuff. But all of those, there's no like proven things that I've seen. It's all kind of like people's thoughts and theories. So, but I haven't really seen anything that there's any like hard evidence.
You never got in trouble for hitting the children?
Nothing that I have ever seen in it.
I didn't find any of that either. It was just a kind of a thought I had while you were telling the story.
Yeah, and so we get in, and Elizabeth actually did talk to Johnny Webb as well, and she thought that it was complete bullshit that Todd would confess to a complete stranger about killing his kids and his plans and all that kind of stuff. She just thought that was really weird. And she found Johnny Webb, and he was actually serving 15 years for robbery as well. And later, after he talked to Elizabeth, he actually recanted his statements to prosecutors and said that Todd was innocent. And then he recanted his recantance. His recanting.
He's double dipping on the
Yeah,
recantance.
double dipping, and then he was just like, I don't know, I don't remember. I'm a goober. I don't know.
So who is this? This was the informant saying this?
Yes, Johnny Webb.
So Johnny Webb later said he didn't say those things.
Yeah, and then he was just like, I don't know.
See, if what I saw or I read was true, the police officer that I saw or the fire detective, whoever it was that didn't like him and wanted Todd Wellingham to be guilty, it sounds a lot like what you're telling me. Maybe we researched two different areas, and it sounds to me almost like the informant was told to say that because
well, I'm going to get into that.
That's what I heard the officer say.
So there was some kind of findings after that, like kind of after this. You're getting a little ahead of me.
I'm sorry.
You're getting a little after we kind of go through this. We can kind of go through all that.
I apologize. You got all the answers later for me, and I'm ruining the story. I'm sorry.
You're ruining the punchline of my joke.
I apologize. Continue. I'll be quiet.
So yeah. Let me. So he. Yeah. So, and then after that, and then Todd actually confessed to Elizabeth that he was guilty of. He actually confessed to her that he didn't try to go in and save his girls. That he was just basically guilty of being a coward. And so Elizabeth Gilbert was trying to kind of get this more appeals moved forward and more investigations, and then 3 months before his execution, she actually got into a car accident. And
the lady that's trying to help him,
Elizabeth Gilbert, his pen pal.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah, and so
bad.
So this is where we get into the actual fire science.
Okay. So here's all the answers, guys.
So before fire investigation science, it was basically just firefighters.
Yeah.
And no science was in it. It was more just
like the opinion of firefighters based on what they had seen.
Yeah, like their experience and all that kind of stuff.
Which is not very scientific at all.
Yeah, and so after this, and actually since when Todd was in prison, fire investigations had actually improved dramatically. And a guy named John Latini, who is an arson scientist, he said it was, basically just firemen, and then the fire scientists started studying their own fires. And
I saw that. It's cool. They take the rooms and make the rooms look like the inside of a house, and then they start the fire. I've seen that. It's really
exactly.
Cool.
So this is where it kind of gets kind of technical, so forgive me if I kind of get a little on the boring side. So Dr. Gerald Hurst, he has been called the godfather of modern science. He's a PhD from Cambridge. And
Godfather of modern science.
Modern science.
That is a title.
Yes.
That is that's something right there. Godfather of modern science.
Exactly. So, and Hurst, so he got the evidence, the arson report before the execution. He said it actually looked like a fire that was flashover. And flashover is, I'm going to kind of read the definition so I kind of get it a little bit more technical, and is when it's gone to flashover, the instant ignition of all combustible material in a room. Flashover leaves natural patterns on the floor that all post-flashover fires leave behind. But these have been, but he had been obvious that these had been misidentified as pour patterns, and they were labeled as arson.
So for the layman, which I am myself, I'm not an arsonist, nor do I really spend too much time investigating or thinking about fires. What we're saying is that when a room heats up enough with a fire, that all of the materials that have not caught fire that are very flammable kind of almost burst into flames at once.
Yeah.
Causing a really hot burning flash that would leave burn marks or imprints in the walls or the floors. That's
Yeah.
what we're saying.
So it looks like you pour accelerant on the floor, basically.
Yeah, because it'll burn hotter and faster, so therefore it'll be a different kind of, almost like a different kind of a fire, if you will, in the midst of the fire.
Yeah, and what looked like created the pentagram patterns as well, and as well as looked like the Todd had poured accelerant down the hallway and out the front door. So John Jackson, the persecutor, that the shapes of the pentagrams that he said looked like the pentagrams. If you look at it, it was actually if you look at the location of the windows, that these are actually ventilation to the fire, and they're actually ventilation patterns is what you're seeing. Is that looks
so it's
like
how
the
the air was moving during the flash fire, during the combustibles.
Yes.
During the combustion of all the materials, the wind was causing
the ventilation wind to the windows.
The flames to shoot in certain directions. Was what you're getting at. Okay.
Exactly. And so, and also what they had seen on the liquid accelerant that they thought from was on the threshold of the porch was actually kerosene. And he said, yes, it was actually kerosene because he looked and there was actually a grill on the porch.
Kerosene grill.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or.
I've never used a kerosene grill, but.
There was. So the accelerant.
Or
I don't know. It was. I didn't go all.
There probably is a kerosene.
This is a lot of science that was just a lot to kind of have to go into. So there was in the porch it was tested positive for whatever was in the grill. I don't know
what they do in car 6.
I didn't really get into the science of it. I was just trying to look at the investigation and see.
That's fair.
And so
there was material on the front porch that was flammable that he had there.
Yes,
okay.
there you go.
Right.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're clear now, guys.
So also, and Hearst also said, well, there's no injuries to Todd, and he said, well, if there was no accelerant poured on the floor, and the floor would actually be quite cool. It would be cool until actually flashover occurred. And so the last thing to actually burn would be his feet.
I was actually thinking that when you said that because the little bit of fires I have seen in here and there in movies, or not even in movies, but in those experiments that I looked up and everything, fire would typically be on objects and then move up the walls. And I would kind of feel like the floor, unless there was maybe a very flammable carpet or something like that, I would imagine the floor would be the last thing to really catch on fire, because heat rises, fire moves up. Even though it does spread out, it moves up faster than it spreads out. So, I mean, for example, if we set this couch on fire, it's going to move up this wall and not out on the floor as fast as it would up the wall.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that absolutely makes sense to me as far as the, lack of injuries on his feet. I don't know why they would have thought the floor would have been on fire first.
Exactly. And he also mentioned that they never eliminated the accidental causes, such as faulty wires. What you said was maybe he accidentally did something, like cuff and paint or whatever, or, any kind of thing like that. So actually Hearst thinks Todd's innocent. He actually said that he thought he was innocent. And on February 13th, 2004, Hearst completed his report.
Or if he wasn't innocent and he did cause a fire, it was more of a neglect issue than an actual... I mean,
he was just going on fire evidence.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just saying, we could all be neglectful of faulty wiring or something and start a fire, and that could be our fault.
Yeah.
But it wasn't intended, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. And so, this was February 13th was 4 days. His execution was scheduled for 4 days later. So, Walter Reeves, Todd's appeals attorney, actually filed many emergency last-minute appeals. And
which at that point, it's up to the governor, isn't it?
Yeah, Rick Perry. Rick Perry was the governor at the time, and he refused to stay any kind of executions.
Now a judge can't even do that, right? It's got to be, when it comes to execution in certain states, it's got to go up to the governor, right? It's got to go up to a political leader, which I find funny because a political leader, I mean, they're not really in the court system like that, and a lot of people that get elected into positions don't know much about the law or legalities or the court system in general. Maybe some do, probably some do. I would hope some do, but I think that's I think that's something that if anybody's listening to me that has any say in that, I think that's something we need to reevaluate, because why would we talk to the governor, not a judge? Just because judges usually are police officers, detectives, they're lawyers, they understand the system, but it's like we're going to this governor who, probably
He's
doesn't
got
have that
elected.
background. Yeah, he probably
Yeah.
doesn't have that background, and we're depending on him to make a reasonable and educated decision about something that I feel like would be more likely left to a judge or even a jury.
And well, as we all know, anybody can run for election.
Apparently so. Apparently anybody, and we've seen that.
If you have enough money
We've
and
seen
enough
that, yeah.
influence.
People like you enough, you're governor, or people don't like the other guy enough, you're the governor. So, continue. Sorry.
So actually Stacy actually went to visit for the first time before his execution. Stacy went to visit Todd in prison for the first time in 12 years, and he asked to be buried next to the girls, and he didn't want her to come to the execution, which she refused both. And her brother actually signed an affidavit that said in this meeting, Todd confessed to her that he did kill the girls, and which was false. And Todd,
hold on, her brother, or was her brother in the room?
no, he said that. So he said that Stacy told him that that Todd confessed to her that he had killed the
Now,
girls.
is there any evidence that that's true?
Not that I know of. And Todd was really pissed off about it, and he was really angry at her. And so, but basically there was nothing for him to do.
Okay.
So, and on February 17th, 2004, Todd was executed by lethal injection. And he said a lot of people say for his character, the last thing he saw Stacy, and he said, "You bitch," and he said, "I hope you rot in hell." So basically,
Okay. That's nice. That's some good last words there.
So, and after the execution, it kind of leads us, some people believe, did we kill an innocent man? In 2008, Texas had a forensic science commission, and they were hired for fire scientist and Dr. Craig Byler, PhD, and he agreed that there was no evidence of arson. And Rick Perry was rumored before his election that he actually fired the committee, and before they were going to do the Byler report, he fired and replaced 3 members of that commission. And so the Corsicana police still stand by their decisions. Johnny Webb has recanted his testimony and said he was actually told to do it by Johnny Jackson, the prosecutor, in exchange for his testimony, that he would help and assist him after the trial. And there was actually, the Innocence Project found documents of his assistance after the trial many years later. So,
All right, so that was obviously a setup. And kind of saw that one coming because, like I said in my research, I'm pretty sure somebody wanted him to look like a Satan worshiper or something like that. So I didn't feel...
Because it would appeal more to the jury's kind of
he was a bad
thinking.
guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the story of Todd Willingham, that he... that this fire happened, basically to kind of... really summarize really quickly, this fire happened. His daughters were in the fire. He ran out. And then this trial happened and everything that we heard about. So what I'd like to do is I'd kind of like talk about my opinion while I was researching this, kind of see what your thoughts are. First of all, we can both agree that there was a really poor investigation.
Absolutely.
There
yes.
was no science involved, realistically. It was kind of all just assumptions made. And I think that both sides here, Todd and the police, prosecution, whatever you want to call the other side. I think there was many mistakes made on both sides of this case. And as I was watching this, I was really cringing a lot during certain things that I heard and certain things that I saw, and while I was putting two and two together. Um, you know, so first of all, shame on the police, shame on the prosecutor. It was poor science, poor investigation.
Even his attorney thought that he was guilty, so.
Even his attorney did.
Yeah, his original attorney.
See, and I'll get into that in a minute, but the first thing I wanted to point out during this is that Todd really did seem like kind of a douchebag. From everything
yeah.
that I read about him when I researched him, he, I mean, nothing against guys with tattoos or anything, but, I could see why the police, he had tattoos, he had these drug offenses, he had satanic, music. I'm not a
His
big
abuse and toxic relationship with Stacy.
the abuse, I mean, absolutely. So we're looking at all this guy's past offenses. We're talking about just he looks like a bad guy. He just doesn't seem like a very good guy.
From the outside looking in.
I get that, and I completely agree with that. However, when I say that the investigation was poor, I'm also talking about tunnel vision. And this really bothers me. What bothers me so much in cases, and I see this all the time, it's probably something I might do a whole show on because I just can't stand the police having tunnel vision. Police get this, and sometimes it's because of personal bias by the police. Sometimes it's just laziness of the police. Sometimes it's just, police are people too, and they get stuck on things. But you're not supposed to be as a police officer. You're really supposed to kind of think about anything that can make sense. You almost kind of want to go over everything and cut out everything, that doesn't make sense until you have what makes sense, regardless of who that looks at, regardless of what the manner of the crime was, et cetera, and so on. So it really irritates me when the police are like, we don't like this guy. And if the listeners and viewers of this, if you look up Todd Wellingham, like I did, you will find literally the police on there saying, he's a bad guy, and we got our guy, and he's a piece of shit, or something to that effect. And it's very obvious that these people were on a witch hunt for him. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm not sitting here saying guilty or innocent. Either way, I'm saying the tunnel vision, in my opinion, is the bullshit that I'm speaking about. It's not proper police work, in my opinion. So with that out of the way, Todd's attitude during the events that followed the fire, in my educational process and the things that I've learned and gone through, with extensive experience with counseling, things like that, everybody's affect is different, and you really can't go. And it's so irritating. It drives you nuts. It made me instantly think of Casey Anthony and how she was acting when her daughter was missing, and just that partying and going out. And it's like your children. There's something wrong with your children, and you're out partying. You're out having a good time. You don't seem to care. It drives a person crazy, and it drove me crazy. I hate to see that. I've got children. I don't know what I'd be doing. I'd probably be pacing a 6-foot hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Trying to think of what to do, or trying to compose myself after something like this. And he's out partying, and that's very, very difficult to deal with. But everybody grieves differently. Everybody has a different grieving process. We have to take into consideration that everybody has a different emotional maturity.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different intelligence. Everybody has a different coping, and it looks different for everybody. And
especially like we don't know exactly since he did start out with drugs and huff and paint and all that stuff at such a young age, we really don't know his, like you said, his emotional maturity, even his maturity level. We just really don't know what that would look like. He could be a
child mentally, and
and children do that.
And maybe he doesn't even have the ability to focus on what happened, or maybe he's denying what happened. Maybe he is blocking it out. Maybe he can't process it. I mean, whatever the case is. So we really can't judge somebody based on how they grieve, and that's just the facts. And I hate the fact that I still see police officers doing that. because that's kind of Psych 101. You know, everybody's different. You kind of have to get through that to get to the facts. I understand that we kind of go off of body language, we kind of go off of how we feel, but everybody's different. I mean, regardless of my opinions or feelings on it, you know, Casey Anthony was found to be innocent, and she looked guilty as hell to me by her actions and the way she was. But I also wasn't involved with the case. I wasn't the judge or jury. Everybody handles things differently. I mean, and the thing is, it goes the other way too. When somebody's devastated that something happened, they feel like they're overreacting. You just can't tell another person how to behave when something terrible or traumatic happens.
Yeah, or we'll be like, they're so dramatic, or you know.
And that's the second thing that really irritated me about this case, and it irritated me on his side because I'm like, dude, you look guilty. I feel like you're guilty by the way you're acting, and you look guilty. But I know better than to judge you based purely on that. And the police, with their tunnel vision, it didn't help him at all. So that was kind of a shame on both sides, really. That one there.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that the next thing that really irritated me about this case was his actions in general. And I've got children. If there's a fire in my house, I'm not coming out of my house without my children, period. You might as well just go ahead and put a stone in the ground for me, too. The fact that he came out of the house, saved himself first. You know, you got two 18-month-old girls and a 2-year-old.
Yeah, Amber was 2.
How dare you? How dare you as a father, as a human being, run out of a house without getting those children? He's absolutely right. If he confessed to being a coward, he was a coward. And I can't say how I would behave in that situation, and I don't think it's right for me to fully judge anybody else in that situation, but I guess that's what I'm doing, and I'm just going with my feelings here. But that infuriated me that he could have saved those. I feel like he could have saved those girls the first instant he realized that there was a fire.
Or maybe if not the 2 twins, but at least Amber.
I mean, if he ran out of the house with Amber and then couldn't go back in, it'd be more understandable than him coming out empty-handed.
Yeah.
But as a father, I feel like shame on him. I don't feel like that's how I would behave in that situation, and I absolutely feel for those poor girls, and that's, you know, really breaks my heart. And I wish that he did have the courage to do what he needed to do. He'd probably be alive right now, and so would those little girls. So he was a coward, and maybe it's harsh, but, you know, in a way I feel like karma kind of caught up with that cowardice, being that it killed 3 innocent girls.
So it still kind of begs the question, though, like, even though he was a douchebag, he was an asshole, he was a coward, whatever, did we actually kill an innocent man? Like, us as a society, as a nation, do we actually kill innocent people? Did he deserve to die because of all of that?
Well, we have, and that's a very small percentage, and I probably have even written a paper that included that information when I was in school. But we have killed innocent people. Not a lot. The judicial system, in my opinion, you know, with the exception of some things, works, you know, most of the time. 3/4 of the time, at least, we'll say. But that's also my own personal politics and beliefs on the judicial system. But we have killed innocent men. It's been proven before. And in this case, my gut tells me that he was an innocent man. The scientific evidence that was brought up, the fact that this guy was judged mostly for what he was like as a person, I think he was I'm going to throw my personal opinion into what happened here. I think he was high. I think he was intoxicated. Mm-hmm. I think that he woke up to a fire. He was a coward. It scared the crap out of him. And he ran out of the house. And that probably, to me, makes him worse of a person than all of his drug abuse and tattoos and Satan worshiping that he may or may not have done in the past. But I do believe he's a coward, and I do believe he probably was innocent, because that's just my gut feeling, reading everything, seeing how the police treated him. And it sucks because I believe he was tormented in prison by other inmates. Because, I mean, first of all,
the guards and stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, child killers, which is what everybody believed he was,
Yeah.
or child molesters, or rapists. They usually don't have an easy time in jail, and I'm sure he got his fair share in jail. So if he was a coward, then he went into a situation where now you're facing death. So you might as well really just died in the fire. Quite honestly, at least you would have been a hero, or at least you would have been with your girls. But now you're going to see the death penalty, and and then while you're in jail, you've got the hardest time in the world. So what I think this is I think that deep down in my gut, this was a case of a intoxicated man who was neglectful and who was a coward. And I think that he probably should have done some jail time, most likely for neglect or maybe manslaughter. Probably not with the death penalty on the table, because hopefully he was hurt some way, somehow from this. And I can't imagine he wouldn't be.
So in my opinion, I do think he's innocent just based on Dr. Hurst's
Scientific medicine.
Exactly.
Fire investigation science.
Yeah, exactly. I do think he was innocent. I think it's really sad and tragic, and I think he actually died because no one wanted to actually admit that they were wrong. No one wanted to admit that Texas could be wrong, and that they didn't want to take the time to go out and investigate those reports. They didn't want to take the time to maybe show that weakness or their weakness, or that they were wrong. And I think that their pride overtook a lot of it. And sometimes I think it does take people's prides does go over people's lives sometimes, especially when you're dealing with politicians and police officers, prosecutors, all that stuff.
So where do we stand with this currently? Is this just a statistic that people that are against the death penalty have in their pocket, or is this has he been proven to be innocent, or is that we're not even there yet? Or
well, I mean, in that 2008 in that commission, I mean, the commission came out, but it was kind of, in my opinion, this case really doesn't get talked about a lot. I know there's another case with a mother, and I kind of want to do maybe something later on that one as well. But there's a new case that has come out as well. But I mean, a lot of people, like, outside of criminal justice, psychology, all this kind of stuff, really don't know who he is. I mean, if you say that name, Cameron Todd Willingham, most people are not going to be familiar with it.
Now, I listen to probably more YouTube videos for true crime than the average person.
Yeah, but the average person's not going to know who he is.
Yeah, and I'm saying, what I'm getting at is that I watch a lot of true crime. Even when I'm laying down and taking a nap, or I'm doing research, I always have Dateline in the background, or some kind of true crime show, or Forensic Files. And I do think when you brought this case to me, the name was familiar, but I think I'd heard it maybe once.
Yeah.
And like I said, I probably listen to a lot more than the average person, so I mean, I could definitely see why nobody has heard of this case or who this person is, and that's really unfortunate, and really also something where it's being a student of criminal justice. I really do think that criminal justice and the whole judiciary system, judiciary fields, we really need to. Those things still need evolution as well as everything else. We still need to evolve. We still need to. There's certain things that we're going to come across and that are going to come up, and it's, I think, our job as moral people and as people that believe in a judicial system, I think it's that we what we need to do is we need to evolve. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We need to change things. We need to think about things a little bit differently. And it's not just some old dusty book that you dust off every now and then to decide what to do with somebody or whether we should kill somebody or not. There's so many cases that nobody hears about, and it's really too bad because really the knowledge being out there and kind of the coverage of these things, that's what's going to change and revolutionize how we handle things in the judicial system. Is kind of a long way of going about what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate that we don't. I know that there's a bunch of other cases that I could think of that really I'm surprised that they're not more mainstream. They're not more covered. They're not studied as much. And being somebody that was studying very recently in criminal justice, there are a lot of things that we're not talking about. We're not thinking about. We're not getting into.
Yeah. And he also came from like a poor. He was poor. His family was poor, and it really didn't have the coverage. He wasn't able to get like the best lawyers and stuff like that. Like Casey Anthony was a privileged, like, white chick who was able to get the best lawyers, all that kind of stuff. And
yeah, she was attractive. She had
Yeah,
intelligent
and-
parents. She had a lot going for her, and maybe honestly that's why her case went so differently than his. She probably had better lawyers, probably lawyers that thought she was innocent, or at least were willing to try to prove that she was innocent, and not telling her just to go for to plead guilty. I think it's always funny when lawyers tell you to plead guilty because, how can you go to court with a lawyer that doesn't believe in you themselves?
Even his lawyer did not believe him. So.
And they obviously knew that they were up against it and that they weren't going to be able to prove him innocent. So,
Yeah.
But I'm sure they knew more than I do. I'm sure everybody involved with this knew more than I do. And I'll pretty much just leave it at that. It's unfortunate that we're not using cases and we're not studying cases more to evolve as a people
Yeah.
and to stop these things. And quite frankly, I'm appalled, and the last thing that I'm appalled at with this case, the last cringeworthy thing in my mind was if there is even a shadow of a doubt that this man was innocent, why was he not taken off death row until that was looked at? Why was that not?
Exactly.
Why was that not at least covered? Why was that not at least considered? That's scary. It's really scary to me that there's new evidence, scientific evidence at that, and we're not even going to pause the death sentence to look at those things because
Because of pride.
it's basically we're willing to kill innocent men over our personal pride,
Yeah.
or over winning the next election, or over not admitting that we're wrong. And that's really the last thing in this case that just it makes me sick to think of that we could just end somebody's life even in the light of new evidence because of those reasons. And that's absolutely sickening to me and absolutely sad.
Yeah.
So that's the story of Todd Wellingham. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I would just like everybody to kind of remember those 3 little baby girls, Amber, Carmen, and Cameron, and just kind of keep their names out there because those are really, like the victims of the story.
And I appreciate you saying that, and even me wrapping this up here, I didn't think to do that, and that's very important, and I'm glad that you said that, and you're absolutely right. We definitely need to keep the victims' names alive. These are 3 little girls that are not going to be able to get an education. These are 3 little girls that are not going to be able to get a boyfriend. They're not going to be able to get married. They're not going to be able to have children of their own because they're gone. And that is really sad when a child and when a life so young is snuffed out so early. Those little girls, they don't have a life, and that's really sad. And you're absolutely right. We should remember their names and pass their names along. And if you're that kind of person, keep them in your prayers. Anyway, this is Psych Opinion signing out. Everybody have a great night, and thank you for joining us. Please
Thank you so much.
subscribe and like. and keep us in your thoughts as well. Let us be the voices in your head. Good night.